church, the visible church in the world, you have the state, you have the city of man, you have the city of God. None of those four entities can be collapsed without remainder into any of the others. The city of man can't be identified just totally with the state. The state can display aspects of the city of God as well as the city of man. Even the church cannot be identified with the city of God, because although the church is on pilgrimage toward the city of God, and although the city of God is present in the church, Augustine was pretty pessimistic about the visible church of his day. When asked, he said that he thought that maybe 10% of the people who were in the church were real Christians. And so he really thought that until the day of judgment, we weren't going to be able to see the direct connection between the city of God and the church. The church is on pilgrimage, as I say, and church and state may both reflect elements of both. But over in triumphalism, what happens is that the city of God gets collapsed into the church and the political entities ruled by the church. So this means that any political entity that's left over, any political entity that exists in the world that is not ruled over by the church and its state, well, it's just the city of man. It's just evil. And so you get this justification then for conquering that. Anything that's the city of man, it's the duty of Christian princes to destroy it and conquer it and take it over. It's as though the day of judgment had already come. It's as though we are charged as the church with the task of judging the heathen, which God has reserved to himself for that day. For Augustine, the church will be judged itself. But here, the church becomes the agent of judgment, the violent agent of judgment upon the heathen. So because the eschatological tension gets collapsed, it is as though the day of judgment has already come. Now, in my book, this is as far as I went. And of course, I didn't use St. Augustine in my book very much. And it would have been a better book if I had. But I did critique Christendom very strongly, okay? But now I would say that this is only half of the story. It's modernity must also be critiqued. And Augustine helps us here as well. And this is what I see lacking in the evangelical left. I see a critique of Christendom, but I don't see a critique of modernity. I see a piling on to the almost universal condemnation of a Christendom that has been in decline now for 8 centuries. But I don't see any prophetic engagement with the challenge of modernity and the state, the godlike state of modernity. So let's look at how Augustine can help us with modernity. The term secularism is not the same as the term the secular. The secularism, whenever you put an ism onto something, you absolutize it. And in the 19th century, the term secularism came into vogue. And secularism means the twisting of this Christian idea of the secular into an ideology that justifies the de-Christianizing of Western society. And so the secularism says that this material world is all there is. This material world is all that we should take into account. And secularism makes the same mistake as triumphalism, because it collapses the eschatological tension between this age and the age to come. And in effect, it says the age to come is here now. The state takes over all responsibility for satisfying the needs of human beings, and religion is pushed to the margins as nothing more than private superstition. And so functions that used to be performed by the church are now taken over by the state. And all human needs are redefined in material terms. And in secularism, the state essentially takes the place of God, which is no better than the church taking the place of God. Instead of a neutral place between the church and the state, where Christians and non-Christians can engage in the realm of the secular and find common ground, the state expands to fill the idea of the whole area of the secular. The state takes over civil society and makes itself to be the entity that decides how we will bring about equality and how we will manage things so that we will have the best kind of possible society. So what we have then is a false eschatology that does not preserve the tension between this age and the age to come, And therefore, both Christendom and modernity end up leading to a kind of totalitarianism or statism. Just want to skip that slide, just to move a little faster. I'm almost done. I think I'm going to make it. I think we're approaching the airport. We're circling, and I think we're going to be able to bring this plane in at the 60-minute mark. Just to review, what do I mean by social justice again? Equality is the highest goal of society. Equality is defined in material terms, economic terms. Natural inequality has to be overcome by human will. Individual freedom should be sacrificed in the name of equality, that people will willingly trade their freedom in exchange for material security and equality. The rule of law should be sacrificed in the pursuit of equality, because you can't just make a law and have it apply to everybody, because then people are naturally not equal. And so the results will be not equal. And so if you just make one law and apply it to everybody blindly, you can't get equality. And so what you have to do to get equality is then to be flexible with the law, to be creative with the law. You need administrators, not judges, but you need administrators in order to make the laws work in such a way that they're applied to individuals and specific groups which are singled out and manipulated in such a way that you can get equality. And the state is the one that has both the responsibility and the right to achieve social justice. The kicker is in number 6, because I think that when the state becomes responsible, when the state is above the law, when the state is above civil society, the state is above the family, the state is above the church, the state is above even the individual, then the state has become demonic in the way portrayed in Revelation 13. It may not be a hard totalitarianism as in a police state like Nazi Germany or Soviet Russia, but it may be more along the line of a soft totalitarianism, the kind of world that is portrayed in Huxley's Brave New World. But I believe that a consensus is being achieved in modern society, and that the pursuit of social justice is a statist project. So we have evolution, as I said, rather than revolution. And the goal is a society that looks like Huxley's. And that's what I mean by statism. I'm not sure statism is the best word to describe it. I'm not sure if someone else will come up with a better word. But what I mean by statism is this consensus that a synthesis of the Enlightenment goals of equality and freedom can be achieved by means of state intervention, and that social justice is a statist project that can be achieved without revolution, but rather by the continuing evolution of the welfare state. As government gets bigger and bigger, it evolves more and more complex means of social control while maintaining the illusion of freedom. In Huxley's dystopian vision, Brave New World, the population has free sex, no family responsibilities, and constant access to soft drugs that keep your mood positive. It is a perpetual adolescence. It's like junior high that goes on forever. And the nanny state, through eugenics and social control, ensures that nothing is allowed to disturb your peace of mind. People readily exchange their freedom in return for security and material equality. If you read Huxley's book, which was written in 1930, and you look at Europe today, you have to conclude that Huxley was prescient. Huxley understood the future. Huxley's vision is essentially Nietzschean. It's essentially the will to power of the overman and the acquiescence of the last man in deference to the vision that is put forward by the overmen who cast themselves as the protectors of... Another person who saw it coming was Dostoevsky in The Brothers Karamazov, in the Grand Inquisitor scene. Once again, he explains the Grand Inquisitor explains the whole theory of how people are willing to trade their freedom in order to achieve material equality and security. The statist project is well advanced in Europe, less so in Canada, and of course much less so in the US so far. The election of Obama has reinvigorated the politics of what Jonah Goldberg provocatively calls in his book of that title, liberal fascism. Goldberg thinks that the statist project that we're talking about is closer to fascism than it is to either capitalism or socialism. The New Deal of FDR is being revived. This is not really socialism, it's statism. It's when people call Obama a socialist, they're technically wrong. But of course, in a sense, there is a grain of truth in it because Obama, as a statist, is saying, he believes something that socialists also believe, and that is that the state is the means by which social justice can be achieved and accomplished in the world. Technically, the state doesn't see the need to nationalize all heavy industry, but why go to all the trouble of nationalizing something that you can milk with taxation and control with regulation? Such a statism is really closer to fascism than either socialism or capitalism. It's certainly not liberal, and it's certainly not liberal in the classical sense, and it's certainly not conservative, and it's certainly not compatible, I think, with Augustinianism, as the chart on the next slide, the next to last slide, by the way, shows. For Augustine, original sin means no utopianism. We can't engage in the luxury of utopianism, it's too dangerous. In modernity, the perfectibility of man means perpetual progress is guaranteed if we just simply turn society over to management by the technocrats. That's what we're seeing in Europe, is management of society by technocrats, so that people are even relieved of the necessity and the burden of thinking about politics and thinking about ethics and making moral choices, and then using their vote to promote those moral choices. The state, for Augustine, is neutral at best, dangerous at worst, must be kept under control, must be kept limited, always has the danger to veer out of control and become totalitarian. But in modernity, the state is the hope of the world. The progress is when you get more state, when you get more government. When you get world government, that'll even be better than welfare states in national government level, because the more government, the more better, because the state is the hope of the world. For Augustine, the secular is potentially common ground for Christians and others, where they can perhaps find some agreement on human flourishing and the good society and begin to live that out. But secularism says there is nothing but the material world, and religion is just private superstition. So religion has nothing to contribute to the public square or the discussion of how we should organize our lives. For Augustine, our real hope is the second coming of Christ and the kingdom of God. But for modernity, our only hope is the synthesis of freedom and equality in the modern state. So, what's the Christian response to all of this? 3 things that I want to leave you with, and then we'll go to questions. First, I think the evangelical left is assimilating itself to the modern project of statism by its fixation on social justice, as defined in this lecture. And ironically, what this leads to is the loss of its ability to prophetically critique the modern project. Because once you accept that social justice is going to come about through the state, you lose the ground on which you stand you need to be able to stand on in order to launch a prophetic critique. All you can then be is a tweaker. You can be one of like those conservative parties in Europe who wants to be able to run the welfare state just a bit more efficiently. But to challenge its fundamental presuppositions, you can't do that. Secondly, the dehumanizing of man in Brave New World, the Brave New World of modernity, must be critiqued. I think that one of the most perceptive prophets of the 20th century, 2 of them, Alexander Solzhenitsyn and John Paul II. Because John Paul II understood that the issue at stake is anthropology. The issue at stake is the nature of the human being as created in the image of God. And I